The Verdon Gorge's Emerald River carves one of Europe's deepest canyons, its limestone walls plunging nearly 7,000 meters and feeding hidden karst springs found nowhere else. Do you know, Mont Saint-Michel's tides can transform the abbey into an island twice daily, with currents so violent, medieval engineers built disappearing causeways to trick invaders. Within the ancient forest that hugs Château de Chambord, an enclosed wildlife reserve harbors some of Europe's last free-roaming deer and boar. Do you know that the chateau's iconic double helix staircase may have been sketched by Leonardo da Vinci during his final years in France, threading two travelers through the same soaring space without ever crossing paths? Built as François the Frisier's grand hunting lodge, Chambord was never truly meant for long residence, its scale more theatrical than domestic. Its sprawling roofline is a skyline of hewers, spires, and chimneys that reads like a city frozen in stone. Inside, rooms open onto vast halls where sunlight pours through mullioned windows and fresco fragments whisper of royal pageantry. The symmetry and daring innovations betray Renaissance engineers, experimenting with form and light. Around the chateau, the Loire's floodplains and carefully managed forests frame a landscape that guided French landscape design for centuries. That living backdrop connects Chambord to a string of Loire estates where royal rivers reshaped politics as much as gardens. Visitors still arrive by the ancient carriage roads, crossing causeways that emphasize the deliberate theatricality between wilderness and palace. Conservation work has restored original sightlines, so the chateau reads as a centerpiece in its hunting park rather than an isolated ruin. At dusk, the silhouette becomes a stage, and guides recount how fate staged extravagant hunts and fetes beneath its towers. Those stories segue naturally to neighboring Blois and the fragile vineyards downstream, where the Loire's soil yields wines that once flowed at Chambord's tables. Today, curators balance tourism with centuries-old practices, reintroducing traditional game drives and oak regeneration programs. This living experiment keeps Chambord both a monument to royal imagination and an evolving laboratory of landscape stewardship for the Loire region, and a model for European park restoration efforts today. Far from Paris, Mont Saint-Michel becomes an island twice daily when the tide rushes in, a tidal spectacle rare in the world. Do you know Mont Saint-Michel's tides race at up to 12 kilometers an hour? A natural spectacle few associate with the nation that also birthed the Arc de Triomphe. Standing proudly where 12 avenues collide, the Arc de Triomphe was commissioned by Napoleon in 1806 after his victory at Austerlitz and completed in 1830s. At nearly 50 meters tall, its colossal vault frames the city and hides stories carved into stone The names of generals, the list of battles, the sculpted scenes of victory and mourning. Most visitors think of the arch only from ground level, but a narrow spiral of 284 steps climbs to a terrace that reveals Parisian geometry, with the Champs-Élysées stretching like a luminous ribbon toward Place de la Concorde. From that vantage, the Eiffel Tower appears as a distant partner in the city's line of sight, and you can trace how the arc anchors grand processional views that have been used for parades and protests for nearly 2 centuries. Beneath the arch lies another secret, the tomb of the unknown Sadiq interred in 1921, watched over by an eternal flame first rekindled in 1923 and relit every evening to honor the fallen. It is a quiet, somber counterpoint to the triumphal rhetoric above, where wreaths and whispers accumulate in a ritual that survived occupation and liberation. If you listen closely, as you descend the steps, you can hear the rhythmic hum of traffic above and the footsteps of generations who have marched here. Revolutionaries, soldiers, lovers, and tourists, each adding a layer to its complex character. The Arc de Triomphe may look immovable, but its meaning has shifted, and understanding those shifts reveals as much about France's history as the names carved into its cornices. Hidden plaques commemorate lesser-known regiments and colonial troops whose stories are only now being re-examined, making the monument a textbook of contested national memory. Photographers favor the arch at sunrise, when the light outlines its reliefs. Historians prefer twilight, when the tomb flame demands silence and attention. From Arc de Triomphe, the avenues radiate outward like spokes, leading you to other chapters of Paris, the luxurious boutiques of Avenue Montaigne, the leafy squares of the 16th arrondissement, and the distant glimmer of the Eiffel Tower. Follow one of those avenues, and you'll discover how each place in Paris folds into the next, a city stitched together by monuments, both grand and intimate. Verdon Gorge holds one of Europe's deepest limestone canyons, sculpted around the vivid Verdon River. Do you know the gorge's famed turquoise comes not from algae, but from suspended calcite and microscopic limestone particles? Walls of white limestone soar nearly 700 meters in places, hosting rare cliff-dwelling orchids. Local climbers tackle routes whose names read like legends, while griffin vultures wheel above silently. Beneath the surface, karst aquifers channel water through hidden caves, creating springs that revive drought-broken streams. Scientists have traced these underground pathways using dyes, revealing rivers that vanish and reappear kilometers away. In spring, snowmelt swells the Verdon, carving new patterns and occasionally revealing fossils embedded in canyon walls. Researchers catalog new insect or plant records here, with almost every expedition underlining how isolated microclimates foster biodiversity. At dusk, the canyon changes color, shifting from chalk white to rose and then to deep indigo as shadows lengthen. Those shifts inspired painters and poets, yet some of the gorge's strangest stories remain little known to tourists. One local legend tells of a hidden grotto where water sings at midnight, a spot few guides admit exists. Follow the river downstream, and the Verdon folds into lavender fields and provincial markets, linking wild geology to cultivated culture. This is a place where stone, water, and human history converge into a landscape that keeps revealing secrets. Stay with us, and we'll descend into a forgotten cave, trace underground rivers, and meet the keepers of these cliffs. Beneath its gilt and marble, Versailles hides a hydraulic network so ambitious that fountains once performed symphonies of water on demand. Do you know the Hall of Mirrors, the palace's most famous room, was built not just to impress, but to reflect sunlight and power back at the king himself? What looks like effortless luxury was engineered by André Lenotre and a team of artisans who reshaped nature into geometric gardens stretching for kilometers. The pathways and bosquets were designed as stages where Louis XIV choreographed court life, turning every promenade into a performance. Step from the Hall of Mirrors into the King's State Apartments, and you move from spectacle to politics, where ceremonies turned private ritual into public authority. Those rooms connect directly to the gardens, so the monarch could emerge from palace to park, like a ruler stepping onto a global stage. Beyond the formal alleys lie the softer secrets, the Grand Trianon, a pink marble retreat, and the Petit Trianon, a later intimate refuge. Follow the Grand Canal and feel the line of sight Louis XIV insisted on, a visual claim extending power toward the horizon. Versailles is not a single story, but a chain of linked places: hall, apartment, garden, trianon, hamlet, each leading to the next and each rewriting what we think a palace can bite. To To truly understand Versailles, you have to move between those connections to trace how spectacle, secrecy, and survival shaped one of the most famous estates in the world. Stay with us as we step through doors, follow hidden passages, and reveal the surprising human details that turn gilded rooms into living history. The next stop is the Hall of Mirrors again, but seen from angles that will change how you remember Versailles forever. From those marshes and open skies to the city's highest natural hill, Montmartre crowns Paris with a basilica whose whiteness seems impossible against an urban horizon. The Sacré-Cœur Basilica sits where the city breathes outward and upward. Perched roughly 130 meters above the Seine, its dome and bell towers offer a vantage that has drawn pilgrims, lovers, and painters for more than a century, creating a panorama of human stories below. Its luminous facade is no cosmetic trick, but travertine stone quarried at Chateau Landon, packed with calcite that exudes over time and keeps the basilica startlingly white despite years of rain and soot. Step inside, and your eyes meet a mosaic so expansive it nearly blankets the apse. The Christ in Majesty mosaic approaches 500 square meters and remains one of the largest sacred mosaics in Europe. Beyond ornamentation, Sacré-Cœur has been a site of continuous spiritual vigil since 1885, an uninterrupted prayer that threads through moments of politics, war, and everyday Parisian life. Beneath the basilica's weight, Montmartre's lanes cradle artist studios, inexpensive cafes, and a tiny surviving plot of vines called the Clos Montmartre, a living link between urban cultivation and sacred stone. The basilica's great bell, La Savoyarde, weighs nearly 19 tons and tolls like a reminder that this hill has been both pulpit and podium for changing French moods. Sacré-Cœur is a study in contrasts, a national monument born from 19th century strife, a beacon for tourists, and a private refuge for solitary worship, a place where the city's loudest voices and quietest prayers converge. Join us as we pull at the threads that bind geology, devotion, and bohemian culture here. By the end, you'll understand how a hilltop church can reflect an entire city's contradictions and secrets. Mont Saint-Michel rises from the bay, where one of the largest tidal ranges in Europe turns pathways of sand into rivers in a single hour. Do you know that the bay surrounding Mont Saint-Michel can shift from dry sand to ankle-deep water and then to wild, waist-high currents in less than 3 hours. Pilgrims once raced the tide to reach the abbey, trusting ancient markers and local guides to avoid the treacherous quicksands. Underneath its medieval walls, hidden salt marshes and microhabitats host species found nowhere else on the French coast. The island's silhouette is actually the result of human carving and coastal processes, a layered story of stone, sea, and engineering. Centuries of silt deposition and deliberate embankments turned a rocky outcrop into the dramatic tidal island we see today. Inside the abbey, stairways slope like tidal terraces designed to channel pilgrims upward, while the sea pushed against the fortifications. Every year, conservationists and locals monitor the shifting sediments to balance tourism, heritage, and the raw power of the tides. Approach it at dusk, and you'll notice an old superstition. Bellkeepers once rang to warn fishermen not to venture out when the sand roads disappeared. Today, the bells mark cultural memory, a living link between medieval rituals and modern coastal science. Mont Saint-Michel is a place where geology, human ingenuity, and the ocean converse in a language that still surprises experts. Stay with us, and we'll trace those conversations, from subterranean channels to the abbey's rooftop, revealing the hidden mechanisms that make this island sing. High on the limestone spine of the Alpes, Les Baux-de-Provence crowns one of Europe's rare karst plateaus, where ancient seabeds were folded into cliffs of white stone. Do you know that many of the village's walls hold fossils of Jurassic oysters and sea urchins? Tiny witnesses that this rocky citadel was once an underwater reef. The ruined citadel, once ruled by a line of Provençal lords, still throws long shadows over olive terraces that survive on impossibly thin soil. Beneath those terraces, an underground network of quarries carved the very rock into chapels, mills, and later into the immersive galleries of the Carrière de Lumières. At the Carrières, colossal projections turn the quarry's pocked walls into moving paintings, a startling marriage of raw geology and high art that few other places attempt. Yet Les Baux' story isn't just about spectacle, it's about survival. Farmers coax fragrant lavender and century-old olive trees from soil no thicker than a hand-spanning fawn. Local olive varieties here produce an oil with a peppery bite so distinctive that gourmets trace its flavor back to the mineral-rich limestone the trees draw from. As twilight falls, lanterns reveal the village's silhouette, and the rocks themselves seem to tell stories of siege, harvest, and pilgrimage carved into every crevice. By tracing those grooves, you begin to understand how Les Baux stitches geology, history, and living culture into a single, stubbornly beautiful place. Later in the film, we'll follow an olive harvester up the terraces and descend into the quarry to watch paintings bloom on stone, showing how humans continue to write onto ancient rock. But first, stay with us as we climb the ramparts and listen for the secrets hidden in the very bones of the Alpiles. Puy de Dôme, a 1,465-meter lava dome rising above the Chaîne des Puys, crowns one of the most perfectly preserved volcanic chains on Earth. Do you know the summit harbors the remains of a Roman temple dedicated to Mercury, a startling link between deep geological time and ancient human rituals? From its flanks, gentle basalt slopes give way to a windswept crater rim, offering panoramic vistas that stretch across more than 100 extinct cones and craters. Geologists call this region monogenetic, meaning each cone erupted only once, creating a landscape like scattered teeth frozen in lava. Climbing toward the rim, you can still sense the slow, viscous flows that built the dome, rock that oozed rather than exploded, shaping a rounded, almost sculpted peak. That unique formation explains why Puy de Dôme stands out among volcanoes, its silhouette readable from decades away, and its slopes carpeted in rare alpine flora at unexpectedly low altitude. On clear days, the summit radio towers and the tiny temple ruins stand in stark contrast to the vast sweep of green plains and layered plateaus beyond. Pilgrims, scientists, hikers, and paragliders all share this unusual summit, a place where science, sport, and superstition meet on the rim of a sleeping giant. In 2018, the Chaîne des Puys, with Puy de Dôme as its crown, earned UNESCO status for its exceptional testimony to volcanic processes and landscape evolution. Yet beneath that official recognition lie surprising stories: railways that defied steep gradients, summit observatories that chased weather patterns, and legends that named shepherds as first climbers. Follow the narrow ridge and you cross time, from basalt pillows to human footprints made of bods and stone, each layer telling a different era of this mountain's fight. Later in the film, we'll trace how eruptions shaped local agriculture, how air currents here influence weather for miles, and why scientists still return to its slopes for clues to Earth's volcanic past. Cap d'Agde cliffs host pockets of rare clifftop maquis, where plant species found nowhere else in France cling to salt-scorched rock. Do you know Cap d'Agde's cliffs conceal an old labyrinth of sea caves and arches that fishermen and smugglers used for centuries? From the top, the Mediterranean unfurls in invisible currents that sculpt the stone into honeycombed ledges and wave-sculpted hollows. Beneath the surf, layers of fossilized shells and ancient river sediments reveal climate stories that scientists still piece together. Walk along the narrow paths, and you pass colonies of seabirds that nest in crevices, their calls stitching the cliff faces to the horizon. The cliffs form a living edge between the resort's polished marina and a wilder coastline that seems to remember older, rougher seas. Locals say the rock changes character with the sun, turning from warm ochre at dawn to hammered silver by dusk. Hidden coves at the cliff base open into calm basins that were once tiny natural harbors for ancient traders. In winter, storms strip the cliffs bare and reveal fossils embedded like time capsules, each layer a page in the Mediterranean's long memory. You can feel the geology beneath your feet, as if the cliffs keep a slow heartbeat that measures centuries rather than hours. To stand on Cap d'Agde cliffs is to watch how human lives and ancient geology negotiate space along a narrow, wind-brushed edge. Later in the film, we'll follow those trails down into sea caves and up to nearby lighthouses to see how this landscape shaped local culture. But first, imagine tracing the cliff line at sunrise, when every shadow is an invitation to discover a hidden inlet or forgotten path. By the end of this visit, the cliffs will feel less like a place and more like an archive of sea-worn secrets waiting to be read. Along the Rhone Delta, France's Camargue hosts one of the world's largest flocks of pink flamingos and wild white horses thriving in salt flats, found in only a handful of places globally. Do you know that France's Parc National des Calanques contains fjord-like limestone inlets, whose turquoise waters have inspired painters and sailors for centuries? From these wild wetlands and coastal cliffs to the heart of Paris, the Louvre Museum holds a different kind of living landscape, an archive of human imagination stretching back millennia. Built as a fortress in the 12th century and reborn as the world's largest art museum, the Louvre is a palimpsest of power, taste, and global exchange. Under its glass pyramid, masterpieces like the Mona Lisa and the Venus de Milo sit amid thousands of objects that traveled by conquest, diplomacy, and trade. More surprising, entire wings are devoted to civilizations you might not expect to find under a French roof, from dazzling Islamic metalwork to African and oceanic ceremonial pieces. What many visitors don't notice is how the museum itself was stitched into Parisian life. The old moat lines becoming promenades, royal apartments still whispering protocols of courtly spectacle. Beneath the public rooms lie vast storage vaults holding tens of thousands of objects, never on display. A subterranean museum whose inventory rewrites what we think we know about history. And when night falls, guards and archivists trade stories of daring recoveries, paintings smuggled in diplomatic pouches, sculptures that vanished, then reappeared in private collections. Today, the Louvre is also a laboratory for technology. 3D scanning restores missing fragments, spectral imaging reveals underdrawings, and digital archives let researchers across continents study pigments and inscriptions without leaving home. This blend of ancient objects and modern science links a classroom in Marseille to artifacts unearthed in the Sahara or the Levant, showing how one museum can connect a nation's landscapes to the wider world. Hidden beneath the Pyrenean ski, the Cirque de Gavarnie in France shelters one of the planet's most perfectly formed glacial amphitheaters. Its sheer cliffs, rising over 1,200 meters, on three sides. Do you know the Cirque de Gavarnie hosts the Grande Cascade, an uninterrupted waterfall plunging some 422 meters, taller than many famous falls worldwide? Walk into the Cirque, and you feel as if you've stepped inside a colossal stone cathedral, shaped by ice, rockfall, and millennia of weather. Shepherds and pilgrims have followed narrow paths here for centuries, and their cairns still mark routes between hidden meadows and secret springs. In spring, the snowmelt swells streams into roaring veins and transforms the amphitheater into a thunderous orchestra of water and mist. By late summer, alpine pastures carpeted with gentian and edelweiss invite flocks of grazing sheep and the echo of shepherds' songs. Those myths mingle with hard science when geologists and historians map rock strata and trace human footsteps carved into the slopes. Visiting Gavarnie is to witness a place where time is recorded in layers: cliff, meadow, waterfall, and cloud, each page readable if you listen closely. And as you descend toward the valley, the path naturally leads you to neighboring villages and the next chapter of the Pyrenean story, proving the landscape is a living, connected narrative. Photographers chase the golden hour here because light slipping across limestone reveals hidden striations and colors that a quick glance would miss. In the next segment, we'll follow one of those old shepherd trails that climbs from Gavarnie's floor up to the dizzying col, where Spain's and France's highlands meet. Now imagine those wild horizons folding into the iron silhouette that reshaped Paris. The Eiffel Tower. More than just a monument, it was born as a temporary display of engineering audacity for the 1889 Exposition Universelle, and nearly came down a few decades later. Gustave Eiffel's lattice of puddled iron was intended to show what iron could do when freed from heavy masonry constraints, and at 300 meters, it became the tallest man-made structure of its time. Yet the tower's story is stitched to other Paris places, from the sound of boats on the Seine to the lawns of the Champ de Mars and the terraces of Trocadero. Its elevators, originally powered by hydraulics and later electric systems, were technological marvels that drew scientists, artists, and curious crowds upward. From its platforms you can watch Montmartre's Sacré-Cœur, catching the morning light, and the glass roof of the Grand Palais, reflecting sunset. A map of Paris revealed layer by layer. The tower has changed color several times, from reddish-brown to bronze. Today it wears a specially mixed hue called Eiffel Tower Brown that is repainted every 7 years. Inside, hidden rooms tell unexpected stories. A private apartment where Eiffel entertained guests, meteorological equipment, and even experiments in wireless telegraphy that foreshadowed modern communication. At night, its skin becomes a constellation of light, But look closer and you'll see rivets and joints that speak of 19th century craftsmanship and the human hands that raised it. Every visitor's route links one Parisian landmark to another. A promenade from the tower down to the riverbank, across to Île aux Cygnes, then onward to the Louvre's glass pyramid. The tower's silhouette also frames seasonal shifts. Chestnut leaves on the Champ de Mars in autumn, the sudden flush of spring in nearby gardens, and the winter clear air that makes distant horizons razor sharp. Its place in the skyline has been a constant in revolutions, celebrations, and quiet afternoons, connecting public rituals in the city to private moments on its narrow staircases. But the most surprising fact is how the Eiffel Tower became a laboratory for modern ideas, from aviation trials in its shadow to radio broadcasts that would carry Parisian voices across continents. As we stand beneath its base and look up, the ironwork tells a twin story: the industrial age's confidence and a city's ongoing dialogue with nature, history, and innovation. That tension between the wild French landscapes we mentioned and the engineered elegance of the tower is what makes this journey into Paris more than sightseeing. It's an encounter with layered surprise. In the next part, we'll climb those platforms, hear the voices hidden in its metal, and follow the lines that lead from the tower across the living map of France. Prepare to see familiar views reframed by details you've never noticed. The play of wind on the Seine, the geometry of beams catching sunlight, and stories etched in metal. Every step up reveals not only Paris, but threads that tie the city's urban fabric to the wild coasts, rivers, and forests that define France's true breadth. From the limestone cliffs of Étretat to the sun-drenched lavender plains of Provence, France stitches landscape and history into one living tapestry. Do you know that under Mont Saint-Michel, the tides create one of the fastest shorelines in Europe, altering access by the hour? We traced royal ambition along the Loire Chateau and wandered through Versailles' gilded rooms. Then we slipped into the vineyards of Bordeaux and Burgundy, where soil, sun, and patient ham-aunts turn grapes into living history. From the dramatic twists of the Verdon to the calm expanse of the Camargue marshes, nature here refuses to be simple. The Alps and the Pyrenees lift glaciers and villages into clouds, while Corsica's wild coastline reminds us of the island's stubborn independence. Along the Riviera, light turned stone into gold, and artists learned new ways of seeing. And in Giverny, one quiet pond taught Monet the language of reflection. If you've seen the icons, remember the hidden wonders. Fossil beds beneath chalk cliffs, subterranean rivers carving caverns in Ardèche, and the lamplight reflected in a Parisian canal after rain. Leaving France isn't an ending, but a beginning. A set of questions to carry home. Why a vineyard tastes like the river that waters it, or how a village choir keeps a centuries-old dialect alive. And if the most astonishing truth is that these landscapes were shaped by hands and time in equal measure, then the last image to take with you is simple: a place that keeps unfolding. Carry its contradictions, grand palaces and everyday markets, wild mountains and patient farmers, as an invitation to look deeper on your next journey. Because in France, the commonplace often hides the miraculous, and the miraculous is most convincing when you find it where you least expect it.